have you scheduled to walk up that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is now 7 p.m. and we are live online.
You know, I turn off my phones, and I never remember to turn them back on, so I don't catch any rings during the week. All right, hey, everybody. Good evening. It's the fourth Monday of May, which means it's a workshop meeting.
Fourth Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. It's the fourth
Maybe.
Tuesday as well.
Is it the fourth Tuesday?
Uh,
Well, because grievance day is tomorrow, so I
Yeah.
guess it is the fourth
There
Tuesday.
you go. So it's the fourth Tuesday of Tuesday, which follows the fourth.
After the
Monday.
first Monday, the second month.
All right, so regardless of what day of the month it is, we have to do a roll call. I actually see everyone here. If anyone's not here, please say you're not here. But I do see Molly, Jeff, Amber, Paloma, Pam, Dan. Lee's here, the city administrator's here. And do we have someone online for the city?
Good evening, your Mayor Christian Gates with Keenan Bean.
Hey, Christian. Okay, it's a workshop. That means we're getting ready for our next meeting. That would be the following Monday, right? The 3rd?
It's June 3rd.
Yep. And then we'll have another one June 17th.
17th,
because we're
yes.
starting the bi-weekly schedule. All right, and then let's go through our items. The first three, I see
4.
the first four. I just didn't want to appoint Carl. I didn't like him. The first four are police appointments, and I see the chief, and I'm seeing double because I'm seeing the chief to be as well with him. And if you would come up, Chris, do you want to introduce these four items or
Sure.
talk about any of them?
Yeah, so we had brought 4 proposed promotions to the council last week in executive session. The council was able to meet with 2 sergeants that we're looking to promote to lieutenant, and a detective who we're looking to promote to police sergeant, and then a patrolman who we're looking to promote to detective. This is all put in order by the chief's announcement of his retirement and us now selecting Tom as the new chief. So we're back filling other positions. And we're going to have a couple more coming because we do have a couple more retirements. We have likely a detective sergeant and sergeant retiring in July. So you'll see a couple others. We've asked the chief and the future chief to come tonight and talk about the candidates. So we have Michael Confield for lieutenant, Oscar Vargas, Afdekran Vargas for lieutenant, Alyssa Rudden for sergeant, and Carl Garofalo for detective. And I'll turn it over to the chief.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. I feel like I'm taking a lot of it lately. But as the city administrator said, we have 2 lieutenant openings. Myself and Lieutenant Figley and the city administrator and the HR director sat down with lengthy interviews with the lieutenants. We thought they did, with the sergeants to be lieutenants, and we thought they did quite well. The first one I'd like to talk about is Sergeant Confield, Michael Confield, recommending him for the promotion to lieutenant to replace Lieutenant Figlia, who will be taking over the chief's position. Mike's graduated from Mount St. Mary's in 2005 with a bachelor's in human services. He started his police career with the town of Wallkill Police Department in 2006. He was assigned community policing while he was in the town of Wallkill, working in different neighborhoods that had problems, and also going to town meetings with different members of the community there. He also worked with Casal Associates starting in 2006, which was a private investigation firm where he did private investigations and private security. We hired Mike Confield on September 22nd, 2008 as a police officer, where he left the town of Wallkill to come here. He was promoted to patrol sergeant on February 2nd of 2021. Some of his current duties now as patrol sergeant, he's a shift supervisor with the patrol division, so he oversees police officers, making sure that they're answering the calls, following up on the calls, getting their reports done, reviewing their reports. When they're not on calls, juggling the things they need to do, patrolling the city, doing some parking enforcement, traffic enforcement, getting some walking done on Main Street or the apartment complexes and in the schools to try to get some one-on-one time with members of the community when we're not on calls. He also, sergeants are the first to investigate the use of force incidents when a police officer does have to use force. It goes, the sergeant initiates the investigation. The way it's working now, it would then get turned over to Lieutenant Figlia, who would also then look at the use of force incident, and then finally ends up on my desk where it gets looked at a third time. Some duties that Sergeant Confield has that the other sergeants do not. He collects and maintains our mental health statistics, which get filed to me on a monthly report, and also he files them with the county as a monthly report. He's also our liaison with the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. Basically, he oversees because we have a cell block, we're the Department of Corrections, they oversee what we do, and they have policies and rules that we need to follow. So he's responsible for the cell block maintenance. He does monthly checks in there, making sure that, he's checking for cleanliness, the locks are working, the lights are on, the hot water and cold water are working, making sure that we have everything required in there and taking care of something if there's a need. He reviews and maintains all the prisoner paperwork, which includes things like our suicide prevention forms, our prisoner check logs, and the property sheets, making sure they'll all be being done properly. New York State Corrections will come down. It's roughly about every 3 years they'll come down. They actually do a walkthrough of our facility. We lay out our paperwork for them to review, and he's responsible to make sure that he's here for those inspections and working with them to get us through those inspections. He also files an annual variance because we do have female prisoners downstairs. We file a variance with the state corrections every November to make sure we're in that. And there's rules obviously associated with watching a female prisoner. And he also files our annual reports with the New York State Corrections every January. He also schedules our annual bloodborne and airborne pathogen training and our fit testing, and he maintains our department's AEDs. The other sergeant we're looking to promote is Sergeant Vargas, Oscar Vargas. A little background on him: he's graduated near NYU School of Engineering with a bachelor's in computer science. He started his police career with the Village of Greenwood Lake Police Department in 2012. We hired him in July 21st of 2014 as a police officer here in the city of Beacon. He was promoted to patrol sergeant on September 24th, 2021. He also supervises a patrol shift, and his duties with that are the same duties that Sergeant Confield would have when he supervises his shift. Sergeant Vargas also has some additional duties the other sergeants don't have. He is our e-Justice Portal Terminal Agency Coordinator. The e-Justice Portable is basically the system that we have to run license plates, registrations, see if someone's wanted, check on orders of protections. We can find out if someone's on parole. And there's rules that go with that system that the state has for us. And as the coordinator, he's making sure we stay in compliance, and we get monthly and annual audits done from the Department of Criminal Justice Services and the New York State Police to make sure we are staying in compliant, and Sergeant Vargas conducts those monthly and annual audits. He also trains our new hires with systems like our impact system, which is our internal computer system, where we do our blotters, our case reports, arrest reports, just kind of our everyday things that we need to get done. He also trains our new hires with LiveScan, which is our fingerprint system. It's electronic and tied into our impact system and into the state. He trains them in TRAX, which is a system that's used to do our accident reports, and the system that's used to write traffic summonses, and he trains them in e-Justice. He also supervises the department's child safety seat program, and he's fluent in Spanish. And then Detective Rudden, we're looking to promote to sergeant to replace Detective Confield, who's will be hopefully making lieutenant. Recommend her for sergeant. She graduated Mount St. Mary's College in 2012 with a bachelor's in sociology with a concentration in criminology. She graduated the Ulster County Police Academy in 2015 and started her police career as a part-time officer in the town of Saugerties Police Department in July of 2015. She was hired full-time by the City of Poughkeepsie Police Department in October 2015, and then was hired as a police officer here in the City of Beacon on May 15th, 2017. She was utilized as a field training officer. That's a state certification that's required. When our new officers come out of police academy, they're required to conduct field training, have to document that field training, and that field, all that documentation gets turned back to the academy at the end of the field training. So she's a state certified field trainer. She also is one of our trainers in the department as far as things. She teaches sexual harassment prevention, workplace violence, disability awareness, taser, and OC spray. And those are annual trainings that the officers get downstairs. She was promoted to detective in July 19th of 2023. She's also certified as a procedural justice instructor. Just this past spring, she was assisting with instruction down at the Rockland County Police Department, where we have 2 officers attending right now. She's just completed police supervisory school on May 17th. That's a school that's required for everyone who makes the rank of sergeant. They have to get that done within a year of being promoted, so she's already has that accomplished. And then finally, Officer Garofalo, looking to make him a detective. He graduated Dutchess Community College with an associate's degree in criminal justice. He was hired by the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office in 2016, and he was hired by us on May 1st of 2017. He's certified as a child safety seat technician. He's also certified as a field training officer, and done field training downstairs with our new officers. He got assigned to Detective Bureau on January 8th, 2024. He's been doing a good job. We typically don't promote someone to detective right away and wait to see how they do while they're in the Detective Bureau. We want to make sure that they're up to task for the job, and also too, sometimes the officers decide they don't want that job. They want to go back and patrol. So both the management and the officers get to feel that job out to see if it's good for them. And Carl's been doing very well there, and he likes the job. Since he's been there, we've been trying to get him schooled up for the job. He's certified for field testing controlled substances with the Searchy NARC 2 field training kits. He's been certified in child forensic interview, FBI basic photography, and FBI crime scene photography. And still some more training up and coming for Carl.
And then I know you mentioned for Detective Rudden that she's basically completed the whatever coursework is needed for Sergeant. And then I think that we had also said for Sergeants Confield and Vargas, they were good on
Yes.
exams as well?
Yep.
Okay.
They would have attended those schools back when they got promoted in 2021.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, I noticed that 2 of them are being promoted the end of the week, whereas 2 are the beginning. Is there any reason for that?
Yes, Lieutenant Figler is scheduled to make chief on June 10th. June 10th, and so Lieutenant Confield will be starting on June 10th to backfill Lieutenant Figlia. And Officer Garofalo, we're looking to promote on June 10th. He's been doing the job since January 8th, and we're trying to get him that promotion as soon as we can. And then the other 2, the Sergeant Vargas and Detective Rudden to Sergeant, is the 16th, which is the week after I leave, and it's kind of when everything else is falling into place. It's when all the other job opportunities open up.
Great. Thank you.
I think it's great that Officer Vargas speaks Spanish. I'm just curious, how many other officers also speak Spanish fluently?
We have 3 officers that speak Spanish.
Does that feel sufficient for the need, just in the community? I'm just curious how
Excuse me, what was
does it
that?
feel sufficient for the need within the community to have those numbers of officers, or do you feel like
No,
there's a more need?
having Spanish-speaking officers is a huge help. It's it's not uncommon to deal with someone who's actually one of our officers' Spanish is his first language, so it's not uncommon to deal with someone where especially if they're just could be new from there or just came from a community that speaks mostly Spanish anyway, and it's a help because once in a while you have to deal with that.
Is there always someone that's on duty that speaks Spanish to be called in if they're needed?
Not always. And if they're here, we obviously call them. And also, too, we can be relying on some other departments to come down and help us out with that also. If we having problems and one of our officers isn't working, we can call some of the neighboring agencies or, whether it's Fishkill or Sheriff's Office or State Police to come down and give a hand with that.
And in the
It is convenient to have our own Spanish-speaking officers.
And in the last contract, we added a $1,000 differential if you are bilingual. So we have 3 officers that have, we test them and on their fluency, and that was to try to attract additional bilingual officers.
Are there any, sorry, this is becoming about Spanish-speaking police officers, but are there options when going through the civil service list to select Spanish-speaking only?
No.
No? Okay.
It's because it's a graded system and
Mhm.
kind of, you know.
Sure.
So we start out with the 95s, like this next test coming up, and go through them, and you know, and then the 90s and the 85s, and
Okay.
it's see what you get off the list.
Yeah, I know how it works, but sometimes there's subcategories of candidates in some titles, so.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
That we don't have.
Okay, everybody good? I know we had an opportunity to talk to the officers in executive session, and I assume that between that and this, we're kind of good to go?
Yeah.
All right.
And then the chief and the future chief are also going to stay for the discussion about towing, in case questions come up that you have.
Okay, that was one of my questions, is whether we had a liaison with the police department to confirm this model works. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think Tom actually wrote it all, so.
Then I'm going to assume yes,
But I'm sure it's fine.
Waiting for his attorney's bill. Yeah, do you want to move into the next?
Everyone good?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, let's go to towing.
Okay, so you have a local law in your packet that updates city code on towing from private lots where the owner has not called the tow truck. So this is not relevant to public spaces. This is only for mainly housing complexes. And some years ago, we understand there were predatory processes where companies were coming in and booting and towing people for exorbitant amounts of money. And the council at that time promulgated this law so that they could protect people from that kind of gouging. They set a fee of $75 as the maximum for towing. And some years later, if you fast forward, we got calls from all 3 of the subsidized housing complexes that they can't get people to come and tow for that price. So Beacon Housing Authority, Davies South Terrace, and Tompkins Terrace have all reached out, and they will be coming to public hearings to let you know this directly. They have an accumulation of cars that have been abandoned on their sites, and they can't get anybody to come in. Operators, we know, charge $125 just to come out when they're called at night, for instance. So this is tweaking the law so that we can, again, still control predatory practices. And the law, I'm going to have Christian walk through the different parts of it, and then the chiefs can respond to any questions. So Christian, can you walk through the pieces of this, please?
And can I ask a clarifying question just before you start?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that it restricts towing from private lots where the owner didn't call the tow truck. Are we talking about the owner of the property or the owner of the vehicle?
No, the owner of the vehicle.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. So if you live in one of these complexes, you can call if you need your car taken for service or to be taken away, and there's no limit on what.
Okay, it's the property, so
It's the property
if the
saying-
vehicle's abandoned or whatever,
Vehicle's
or
abandoned.
parked in a fire zone or what have
Or
you.
they're trying to
Okay.
clear snow and they've warned a car repeatedly and they can't clear the snow, this would allow them to tow. One of the things that stops them from being able to do is booting, because that was really badly abused.
Okay.
A car, a tow company would come in, they would tow the first car and they would boot 3 or 4 others. Now, sometimes you tow that first car and all the others then magically move. So Christian can go through the details of this, and I know he worked closely with the police department on this to make sure it was workable and there were safeguards built in.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I'd like to also thank Chief Sands as well as Lieutenant Figlia for their help in reviewing this law. as Chris alluded to, this proposed local law is really intended to accomplish two primary things. The first, as you'll notice, is removing booting and prohibiting it. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's pretty evident that you can't boot, but if you do, that it's subject to the general penalty. And then the second is addressing tows from privately owned property without the consent of the vehicle's owner or operator. So as Chris said, if your car breaks down or you need to have the car towed, this doesn't apply to you. You're able to call any tow truck company that's either provided by your insurance company or one that you feel comfortable with. It also doesn't apply to city tows and impounds. And then the third level of exemption are single and two-family homes. So if someone is parked in some, a single family or two-family home's driveway or in their parking area, they don't need to follow the provisions of this local law, except that the towing company that they call only has to follow two processes. And those are really consumer protections. And so, for example, they'll need to give the police department prior notice of the vehicle. They'll need to still get a written authorization from that property's owner, or if it's a tenant, that tenant. And then they'll also need to take the vehicle to the police department for verification. The towing company would also not be able to charge different fees. So again, those only apply to single and two-family homes. As Chris said, we're also moving the fee schedule out of the local law and into the schedule of fees. While it wouldn't be a fee that the city is charging, this would still give the city council the flexibility to set the fee in order to make sure that, towing companies, they can still remain competitive, but also avoid those predatory practices. The interesting thing is New York State delegates most consumer protections for towing to the local municipality. And in here, there are 3 additional areas that we tried to clarify and add some more consumer protections. So the first is to ensure that the correct vehicle isn't towed. The towing company will need to give prior notice to the police department, call them, tell them what the color, make, model, VIN number, state license plate number is, as well as the numbers of the state license plate. They'll need to get a written authorization from that property's owner or operator that provides some, makes the owner operator a little bit responsible, and so that you can tell and we can have a system to track where cars are getting towed illegally. And it finally requires that vehicle, once it is towed, to be brought to the police department to be verified. We added some additional language to the signage just to clarify what information needs to be included in the signs before you can tow the vehicle. And then also the towing company requirements, they need to be open daily and available for towing until 6 p.m. This will allow people to pick up their vehicles if they're unfortunately towed while they're at work. And that also requires the towing company to have a voicemail, as well as some additional information in that voicemail to allow people to retrieve their cars, such as the ability to obviously leave a message, their address, their normal hours if they're obviously different than 9 to 6. And so those were really the main goals here. We tried not to make any other substantive or drastic changes, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
I had some questions. When I was reading this, I was envisioning a business on Route 52 that has customer parking only signs. There's 3 of them, but they definitely don't say warning. I went over this morning, took pictures. They're probably, yay big. So technically, they are wrong in having those signs, if I'm reading this law correctly, because it needs to be 3 feet by 3, which on that little piece of property seems obnoxious.
Yeah, so that's actually not a change, though, but that was in the ordinance that we have standing right now. So.
Right, I get that it's
Yeah,
not
I see,
changing,
yeah,
but
what
then
you're
I'm like
saying.
looking at that property going, wow, that'd be really obnoxious. And they have 3 entrances to their business. So then I'm like, how do you put the 3 by 3, 15 foot from that entrance, that entrance, that entrance? So they could need 3 signs to be more obnoxious. And I just like envisioning this, And I only know that they had cars towed from the property because neighboring businesses, patrons are parking in their lot and filling it up so they can't have people parking who are actually their patrons. So when I'm looking at that view, I'm kind of like, it's a lot. But I know it was already the law. So and then I'm thinking, they probably have no idea about this. And then for them, because they're not following the law, if they do have a car towed, could the vehicle owner say, sorry, you broke the law by towing my vehicle, and you've got to pay for it? So that was one of my thoughts.
Could we, in reviewing this law, change the size of that sign?
Sure. Now, I think Christian mentioned something in the discussion about certain elements being required on the sign.
Okay.
Yeah, it needs to say warning, and there's some
No,
other.
no, I mean like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
like state law. Am I
Yeah,
correct about that, Christian?
there is a provision of state law, which is really the only major provision of state law that discusses this. We can go back and check. I'm not sure if it discusses the size of the sign, but, for example, the additional information we've added, making sure that the name of the towing company, the address, and their telephone number, that is set forth under state law. And I
But
think,
Christian, a more appropriate size would probably be a 12 by 18, and I think my complex uses those and has all the information on them. So if we could check the size, I think that would be a minor change to the law that would
Okay.
help with kind of overpowering everything.
Yeah, yeah. And then I had one other, logistically, are you used to tow trucks going to the police station and turning around? How do they do that?
Someone can't tow a vehicle without, like, for instance, if the owner knows, we don't have to be notified. But like, if your vehicle's repossessed and you don't know it's repossessed, they're mandated to come tell us. They actually have to report it to us so we can put it into the eJustice portal, so someone isn't reporting their car stolen. All right, so that's something we deal with on a regular basis.
And they wouldn't have to necessarily turn around. The police could meet them on the bottom floor. So they could come in the top, go around the circular drive and come out by the Sally Port, which is another entrance for the police.
Okay.
So logistically, we can make it work if they have any issues backing up on the second.
And they have relationships with the city, so they're used to the process, and they have their application on file, and from what I was reading, the tow companies have to have the information.
Well, when this new ordinance comes out, there'll be different companies, because right now, there's no companies towing it out of the apartment complex.
No,
They
no
won't
one will
do
come
it
to
until
Beacon.
someone- So
Yeah.
when this gets passed, it can open the door for companies then to register with the city. For the repossessions, they don't have to register for the city. When the banks are doing repos, they don't, but they're still mandated to come and report when they do tow the vehicle.
But if this business in question, if they had something towed, they would have to make sure that it's a towing company that is accepted by the city, and then they would only be able to charge $75 right at
Well,
this moment.
So under the existing provision of the Beacon Code, and we're not proposing any changes, you need to have a signed contract between the towing company and the owner or operator of the privately owned real property. And so we're not proposing any changes to that requirement. They would still need to have a contract. And we did look at some other municipalities, and that is a common provision. And also that is one of the few provisions that is authorized under the state law, which is General Business Law 399-V, if anyone is.
So Pam, I think your question is about the legality of the towing that's happened, and it may not be in compliance with our code. So there might be a cause for challenge. For instance, if the person was charged $300, under our code, that would be in violation. They can only be charged $75. The owner would have had to have a contract with an entity. We don't know of any entities near us that are willing to tow, so I don't know who they had tow. And I'm guessing they didn't tow for $75.
Right.
I do know
I-
we work a lot with the last few months.
Yeah.
Working with them, trying to locate owners of the vehicles and stuff, so they can try to get them moved without towing.
I did have some questions about the fee structure. So I noticed that the local law today, $75 is the max. We're taking that out, and it seems that we are saying that the fee will now be set in the city's schedule of fees as opposed to within this legislation.
Right.
So who would be setting that fee?
Christian?
It would be the council.
Okay, so that is still our, I just don't see it in
No,
this legislation.
Christian, I don't think that's correct. It was the police chief makes a recommendation to the city administrator for that.
Can you confirm
Okay.
that, Christian? Because that's what was my understanding.
Yeah,
as well.
that, and the reason for that is so that we can figure out the market. I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking to aim at 175 right now. We think we have an entity that's within 7 miles of the city, that's willing to service the 3 complexes that are most, having the most difficult time with abandoned cars. But we need to be able to adjust. And again, we do, I don't think we would want to have the return to $400 and $500 towing. But we have to find where the market is so that somebody would actually show up and tow.
Yeah, I don't necessarily object to that. I just wanted clarification on like what that process actually would be and who is approving or determining that.
Christian, have you seen that area,
Yeah, I'm seeing that. I'm sorry that was in there. My apologies.
Okay.
Okay, so based on,
we had intended it for the police
Yeah.
chief to do research on what the going rates are in the area, and then make a recommendation to the city administrator.
okay.
Because
And
we
then-
don't bring the fee schedule to you on a
Exactly.
regular basis unless something's gone up more than 20%.
Okay, and again, not necessarily objecting, just looking to clarify. And where is the schedule of fees published? Is that is
on
that
the-
only on the website,
Yeah, it's on the
Okay.
city clerk's page.
city clerk's page? Okay, thank you.
So then that's everything. It's building department, it's leachate fees, it's dog and dog licensing. Everything that we do is on that.
Okay,
We have, as a council, set fees before. I'm pretty sure, like when we did the smoking ban for parks, we established a fee. So I know that.
That's not a fee, that's a,
Fine.
that's a fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have a schedule of fees, and according to your code, unless we change it more than, Christian, help me, 10%?
Yeah, I think it's 10 or 20%. It's in that range.
Okay, Susan says 25, so I believe Susan. While you spiral away.
Shrinking. Yeah, my question, again, I'm not sure I was around for this law. It's dated 2012, which is one of my gaps. But the question I had is around the owners of property to whom it applies. And let me just ask some questions. On my home, if a car parks there and I have no idea who they are, this law doesn't apply to me because I'm a private home.
Correct.
Correct? Now, I have let's assume I have an accessory unit on my lot. Does it apply to me?
Well, as long as the property is a single or two family, so if you had an ADU, you would be okay. You would not. This law would not apply.
Okay, now let's go to the next one. If it's a two-family, one of which I live in, does this law apply?
No.
I would opine that it does not, because under the zoning code, two families, ADUs are allowed at single and two family.
Okay.
And so if you were a two family with an ADU, it would not apply.
Because I'm just concerned that the definition of privately owned real property, and I'll ask my next question, what about 3?
If it was a three family, yes.
So you're
Which
saying
because,
if
and
you
that
have
is because a three family house is defined as a multi-dwelling
Yeah.
under the zoning code.
Yeah. So that my concern is this is way too inclusive, right? That there should be possible for someone who has a modest number of units, I don't know what the right number is, but the concept that you have to post on, a single-family home that has 3 units, I can name you a bunch of those, just seems onerous. And it seems to me that you should be able to, deal with it as it is your property. It would seem to me that the point of this law is dealing with large parcels. And maybe we should define it by size of parking spaces as opposed to the way it's defined now, because it strikes me as being overbroad.
So I think it, then also the question about a private business with a parking lot.
Yeah, 2 cars, say, right? Suppose you only have 1 car, 1 spot, and somebody parks in it, right? I forgot to raise those, right?
Right.
But similarly, right?
So I think there is some tweaking that needs to be done.
Yeah,
For sure.
I do want to note that the only revision we made to the definition of a privately owned real property was just adding single and 2-family homes as the exception, because currently it just says private homes, which are not held open to the public. So try to add a little bit more clarity, but we can review the definition of a privately owned real property or tie it to the number of parking spaces available.
So just for clarification, you guys are looking for
Yeah.
something to kind of differentiate between a parking lot and a driveway.
Well, we're trying to address,
I mean, I tend to agree, right?
we want the law to still address, this kind of gouging practice,
Yeah.
right? But, if I had, a home with 2 apartments in it, it's a 3-family home, and someone parks in my driveway, I have to go through all of this.
Right, no,
You
I
know?
see what you're saying.
So I
And
think
that was
there's
kind of our
like-
intention.
So I think the
is that
mayor's
there's a
point about
difference.
being onerous is correct, but
And
what's
there's
the
a difference
line?
for the person doing the parking, right? You're parking in a parking lot versus what's obviously somebody's private driveway, right? That's, yeah.
I would think we should be careful about saying driveway versus parking lot, because I've seen driveways that look like parking lots and vice versa, so.
I get what you're saying, just for like, before we actually dive into the legal definitions, just for like common understanding, driveway versus parking lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it would apply regardless of whether it's a commercial or residential. If it's small, right, so maybe there's some, definition we could work there in terms of maybe number of spaces, right?
What do you consider small?
5, 10?
5 spaces?
Yeah, right? I'll give you another one we could do, which is, we could say that there isn't a registration requirement for the owner under a certain size, but they would still need to call one of the ones that are registered. That takes care of pricing. It just removes the registration component for the owner.
Well, just like even the electricians, you can only deal with
Yeah.
certain ones in the
Right.
city, and the plumbers. Could you do something like that, where it seems like a lot of work on the owners of these properties, who it really isn't an issue, only once in a blue moon? I mean, this situation that I dealt, the woman was in tears. She didn't know what to do. So then when she has to get all her ducks in a row, and it's like she probably wouldn't have done it, but what is that happening to her business? But I get it, where at these housing, it probably is a huge issue.
I think that
They could do it a lot.
I think that, if I'm understanding correctly, I think the challenge with the suggestion that you just made is that registration of the towing company is not with the city, and we are not proposing to have it be in the city, with the city, in this current iteration of the law. So it is the responsibility of the property owner to register this towing company. So in the scenario you were just talking about.
I think there is a towing company registration
Yeah,
currently.
Okay.
If I could clarify, so exists currently under the towing code, and we have not proposed any changes to this. It's the towing company that needs to be registered with the city, basically have a license from the city, and that is 211-37. The only onerous on the property owner in that regard is that they need to have a contract with a towing company,
Okay.
and then they need to sign a written authorization when the towing company shows up to actually tow the car. And that written authorization just helps, have a continuing line of that the right vehicle is being towed. But in terms of towing people, business owners, or they don't need to register with the city to tell the city that they have a contract with a towing company. That's the responsibility of the towing company.
That doesn't sound too onerous on a business, but if every family, with every 1 and 2 family home had to do that in order to tow somebody, that would be...
1 and 2 family homes do not have to do that
Right,
either.
exactly.
They just have to sign a written authorization. That's it.
We talked about this a little bit and thought about maybe the threshold being non-homestead, so you're above, you're 4 units and above, or you're both a business with residential. Would that,
That might do it.
is that closer to where you want to be?
Well, so
Well, the
that-
one thing about homestead is, I believe homestead is you're able to have that if it's a condo or a co-op. And so we need to make sure that we don't exempt those types of properties from this as well.
No, but I'm just saying using the same threshold, which is a 4-family and up or a mixed-use property.
Okay.
Yeah, I would still rather see us go by the size of the parking lot. I mean, tracks on 52, what is that, a 6-car lot or something?
No, it's more than that.
Well, but
I'd say
it's not a
10,
big lot,
at
right?
least.
And, I would rather pick a number of spaces, because then you're pretty clearly defining the distinction between a driveway and whatever, like 10 spaces. All right, and if all what we're saying now, as Christian's explaining, is we could remove the requirement that the owner have an agreement with the towing company. It's like, you mean I can't just call them because it's only been once this has ever occurred? No, I have to have an agreement first. That just seems out of line.
What about the signage? Do you want to exempt the signage for people?
Under a certain size, I would think, and again, I can't define the line, but I'd like that as well.
Well, I think you as a body have to define the
Yeah.
line. That's,
I think the signage is actually a good preventive measure from having the parking problem to begin with. If that sign is there, I'll be less likely to, park in, I'll be going from the bar over to the cafe's parking lot.
but it's kind of a chicken and egg thing because you don't get the sign with the towing company's name is on that sign, and you usually get that by having an agreement.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to exempt having the agreement, you're going to have to exempt the sign.
I would assume businesses, even with a small parking lot, would be motivated to have a sign because they want those spots for their patrons. It's going to be it's going to be the residential owner, and I'm with you, Lee, I don't know what's the right size, but they're going to be like, how often is this actually happening that I need to take this effort to register and find a company and get the sign, so.
Yeah, so maybe there's a different limit whether it's residential rather than commercial. And I can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get a, tow-away sign. It doesn't have to be, for a particular towing company. Right.
No, it does.
No,
Under
by
the
the law
code,
you
it
do.
has
Under
to, it has to say, this is where you go to get your car if it's not here anymore.
Well, and that is a part of the state, the very few state law on this is that the sign has to include the name, address, and telephone number of the operator of the parking facility, as well as the name, address, and telephone number of any person towing from that parking facility.
So that means there's a lot of inappropriate signs around the city probably right now. Just the ones that say, warning, you'll be towed, towed at owner's expense. Those are not appropriate.
Well, they can put up the sign.
Right, they just
They
can't
violate the code when they tow.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put up any sign, like, oh, this is,
Sure.
scare people away, but,
Which is parking only, all others will be towed, right?
yeah.
TOAD. So what I'm hearing is, we have this area at the lower end that we're still working on in our heads. We may not have an answer right now. Let's go through the rest, and then we can maybe come back to this, because I think we'll get close on the rest.
Also, the problem we're trying to solve for is that there are people who want to tow who currently are running into the challenge of money. Can we just, or the challenge of it costs too little in our code?
Yeah.
Do-
No one will tow
Yeah,
from these
no one will
complexes.
tow
Like,
is what
we
I'm
have
saying.
8
We have-
abandoned
yes.
cars at one
Yeah.
of them, and no one will.
Do we need to set the limit? What I mean is, can we say, if you want to tow cars from your, oh no, I guess we still have to, I forget, I had thought of like, oh, could they just sign up for it? But yeah, we still have to delegate that amount.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And it's like one of the, like, I'll just bring this back to my favorite children's book. If you give a mouse a cookie, it's like, you've asked us to look at this legislation, and now we need a napkin and a glass of milk and all the other things, so.
But I mean, I don't know of any businesses that have parking that's less than 5 to 10 spots. Can anyone think of, I mean, most of our businesses have more parking than that are plazas. I think we might be making more of this than we need to, and we could simply set,
There are
I don't know,
some
make
right
it a
behind Main
4-family
Street
or
that
a
are less.
6-family.
Well, what if, I
Hold
mean,
on,
if
Right
all
behind
of
Main
these,
that are less, but it's
yeah,
fine.
if all of these cars that are being towed today have to stop by the police department, and so somebody doesn't think their car was stolen,
They don't
Are you
have
guys
to
able to-
stop by today.
they don't have to
only
stop by
to-
today? What I'm trying to get to is, could you tell us in the past year, like where the towing, like, could you tell us in the past year where the most of the towing is occurring? And then maybe that gives us a place.
There's no
Not at all.
towing occurring. That's the
Okay.
problem.
But it's, I think traditionally the larger
Yeah.
Yeah,
complexes.
previously, the
and
issue
some of the
was,
larger
and
businesses,
the law
right?
was passed because Tompkins Terrace and Forrestal Heights contracted with tow companies, and they, as part of that contract, they were allowed to patrol the lots
Yeah.
looking for unauthorized cars. And they would patrol the lots, and they would find them, and they would tow them, and it caused a lot of disputes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that's where this all kind of came into play.
And now we're on the other end of the spectrum where
Where we have
you
a problem
can't get
and we
rid of
can't get it,
abandoned
yeah.
cars, and the people that have a legitimate right to park there have no parking.
I do have examples on Main Street of very small spaces, right? They barely have any parking at all. So behind the Dunbarrow building, there's, I can think of 2 or 3 just before the curve on Main Street. So I think there's some small ones.
Willow and Main, I think that's a combination of residential and business.
Yeah. So, again, this might be the one area where we have to think a little bit about. I think the other option we have is we could just push forward with the narrower piece that, Christian has put up, which is just changing the fees and how the fees are done, and split it in 2, or we can try to solve it.
I was thinking that too, deal with the booting and deal with the price so that we can get this going and then revisit it on the other information.
This isn't that hard. Let's set a threshold, please, because
I feel like I would be okay with 5
If you want it to be
spots.
10 spots, make it 10 spots, but like,
I'm going to put 5 out there so that we can react to that and move on, because we have to have a public hearing about this, right?
All right.
So somebody will tell us if like 5 spots is completely bananas, and like you're going to mess up their whole life over it.
So I'll pick 10. Now we have a range. What do others think?
I gotta go back and count some spots.
You know what, I
I don't know if that's the answer.
whatever, both of you are right and both of you are wrong, it's arbitrary that we say it this way, and I would rather that the police chief and the attorney go back and come up with a proposal for us. I just don't know that it seems arbitrary for us to just.
we made a proposal. This proposal was from the police and the attorney, so this is for you guys to decide. This isn't that hard. Just come up with a number and we'll plug it in. Make it 8. I don't know, make it 10.
Well, I would say maybe everybody, you could say it's everybody, but where I'm caught on, especially for this small little lot that has 3 entrances, that they have to have 3 by 3 foot signs,
We'll
15
look at
feet
the
from those
signs.
entrances. And I get the information is important to have on there. And then the other thing that I'm caught up on a little bit is it's the 211-40B. It's saying all requests for tows from privately owned real property must be made directly by the owner or operator of the property by the towing company for each. So I guess that's saying the towing company knows that they're dealing with the right people.
That was to prevent patrolling.
Right,
So
right.
that means that the tow company can't say, I got a contract, I'm coming in there 7 o'clock at night, I'm looking for all the cars without permits, and I'm yanking them.
Right.
They're covered with snow
Now, it
and
has to
yanking
be
them.
a specific call about a specific car to say, hey, I run this complex, I need that car taken out.
So let me make
And
it-
that's to the towing company.
Right, they have to notify the towing company, take this car out, take
And
that
that's
car
it.
out,
Okay.
versus the towing company finding the cars for themselves.
Right.
Let me make a suggestion. So if we said, if you're below the threshold, what I'm thinking of doing is trying to make below the threshold, there's still some protections, right? It's just, it's not as onerous on the owner. So if we said below the threshold, you'd have to call one of the towing companies. If you were towed, you'd have to post a sign prominently by where the car was, indicating how to go get it, so that you didn't have a 24-hour sign there that's 3 by 3. But if it's under the limit, whatever our limit we set, you'd still have to use one of those, you'd still have to call it in. It wouldn't require a contract, but you'd have to post if it were towed prominently, if it occurred. Would that work on the low side, right? Below the limit, whatever we set. Because I think that gets to why we're worried about setting it too high. I think that might solve it.
Right, but, so we would still exclude 1 and 2 family homes?
Absolutely, right?
So a 3-family home would have to adhere to what you just described?
Yes, you wouldn't have to sign, you wouldn't have to post a sign.
Wouldn't have to have a
You
contract?
wouldn't have to have a contract, but if it were towed, you'd have to post prominently the car, you know, the license plate that was towed and where to go get it.
Christian, do we run afoul of any of the state ordinances by doing so?
I would need to double check, but I know that you can't tow unless it's posted. And I did pull up the state local law, and so we're allowed to basically regulate 4 different areas, and then obviously if the state law does not encompass it. So state law defines a parking facility as 5 or more motor vehicles. That is what the
there you go.
parking
There's your
capacity
limit.
is. And so we were trying to make sure that kind of those in-between spots were captured. But, I mean, we could make it 5, that's it. If you have 5 spots, you have to adhere to everything, or we could add additional
Would you like
carve-outs.
to take a victory lap right now?
Can we all say
could
my
stop the
favorite
meeting.
words? You were right.
All right.
Victory lap.
Everyone agree on 5 then?
Yes.
Could we
5 sounds good.
look at
Alright.
what the placement, all warning signs
But let's
must be
stay on 5.
posted?
Is 5 okay? And then we'll go back to placement, because we're
Yes.
almost done here, Pam. 5?
Yes.
5.
Okay.
So businesses with over 5 parking spaces.
Anything with over 5 parking spaces,
Anything.
other than a 1 or 2 family.
Okay. I can agree to that.
And then we'll check the size, because that 3 by 3 is huge. You know, I mean, like, if our
Well, and
parking,
it's needed in every curb cut.
yeah. We'll look
Within
at the,
15 feet.
why don't we come back with the signage that's not so onerous?
Right.
Yeah. I also
the
think,
eye.
and maybe to Pam's point, and I'll kind of defer to the experts, that the law does get into details, but it also says that the police department, and I think the superintendent of highways has to inspect it, so maybe there's a way to write it saying that they have to come out and see the property anyway and say they will determine, does this fit for the property? So there might be some way not to be as specific in the law, but still allow for that. As we already have that sign off in the law, that might be a way to not have those pieces of property that, if they stuck to the letter in the code, end up with signs everywhere.
I'd be interested, has anybody gone to the superintendent of streets to say, can you look at my sign?
So I think initially when this passed, you saw a lot of these signs in compliance in those areas, and since then, I don't think we've seen much concern with it.
Okay.
As far as the signage goes, I think it's got to be fairly specific, because otherwise you're kind of opening yourself up to, well, you were all right with his sign and you're not all right with my sign because you don't like me, right?
Right, yeah, that's a
So
good
we want to
point.
kind of separate ourselves from kind of making value judgments there. But the signage element probably could be more elegant. I think when we started looking at this, we looked at it to change it minimally. And then obviously we bring it to the council and you guys look at it and you say, hey, you know what, this part's not that great, that part's not that great, and of course then we can go back and work on it, right? If you guys were here for the sound ordinance, we did that a lot.
Remember when we all went outside and had to listen to like the different noise
Yeah.
levels?
How about that, guys? Corduroy blazers, right?
It was great.
That's because you get those people who wake up in the middle of the night hearing all the music, so.
All right, so our to-dos are, we're picking 5. We're adjusting the size of the sign. And are we eliminating anything below 5? No. Are we requiring anything below 5?
I don't think so.
Well, you're still regulating the cost. You're exempting under 5,
From
the
posting.
contract and posting.
From contract and
But they're
posting.
still subject to the law. They can't come in and charge $500 for a tow.
And
Yeah.
they will need to bring it they'll need to bring it to the police
Right,
department.
and they'll need to be a registered entity with the city. Right, Christian?
Well, so if they're exempt, as currently drafted, if it's a single and two-family home, they don't need to be registered with the city. But as we mentioned, they would still have to follow the other things, calling up the police department, getting the written authorization, bringing the vehicle there, and then they couldn't charge any fees that are different.
I understand where you need to go on
Yeah,
this.
okay.
There's a bit of,
Of
I think
adjusting
though,
to do.
right,
Yeah.
previously, we were looking for full exemption for those because it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
it's easy to accidentally maybe park in a parking lot and run afoul of that person's rules. You're not accidentally, right, at the end of the day, you're not accidentally driving into the driveway of a single-family home and thinking, oh, I'm probably good to be parked.
I think,
So like, if you do that and it gets towed out of there.
You deserve
You know,
it.
you get what you get, because that was
Yeah.
pretty obvious,
I
right?
know.
Whereas people, we were having a problem with people who were, didn't have a parking permit in Tompkins Terrace, who were there as home health aides, and they think that they're allowed to park there because they should be, right? And then they come back and their car is gone. So it's just a different scenario with a single-family home versus a parking lot.
All right, so I think I heard the city administrator say he's got it.
Yep.
And he'll come back to us,
yes.
right?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. If you could help me understand if there is a renter, for example, not the property owner, they have somebody visiting, they park in this parking spot. It's not a car that the owner recognizes, but it's, I don't know, a family member, a sanctioned visitor. What recourse does the renter have if the property owner decides they don't want that car there and has it towed? Is that addressed at all in this, or does this go into sort of your lease agreement with your landlord?
I think it would depend. I mean, if it would be captured as a large apartment complex, I think that most places, at least in my experience, have required you to have visitor passes or park in designated visitor spots. If it's, a single or two-family house and you have a relative staying with you for a while, there's currently no, I guess, additional provisions for that. The owner could theoretically get you towed, but I mean, that would be a difficult conversation to have with the landlord.
But I think it would also depend on the complex. We've been thinking about
Yeah.
rentals only. So think about a condominium, because I'm really familiar with that, and living in a condominium for 25 years. We have snow ordinances. If you don't move your car, you could be in your spot, but if we have more than 2 inches of snow and they can't plow your spot, they have a right to tow you, whether you're an owner or a renter. So it really also depends on the rules in that complex. If you're towed and you were within those rules, that person could do a small claims against the owner. But if your rules, like we have bylaws that we all, when you buy in, you agree to do those. For a renter, I'm sure they also have rules like you have to move your car after, a certain time if you have snow, or and again, the real problem here is people just walking away from cars. I mean, we have cars that have been there for years now, and they can't get rid of them.
Do we also need to set a public hearing at this point, or what do we want to do as our next steps?
We were going to propose to set a public hearing for the 17th, and you would vote on that next week if you're comfortable with it.
we have, in our next meeting, we have a workshop and a council meeting, right?
No, you just have a council
council.
meeting, and then on the 17th, we'll have a workshop. So, I mean, again, on the 17th, you can have a public hearing, we can workshop this, and then you can decide to vote on it or not vote on it, and workshop it again if you need.
So on this particular one, because I think I knew where you were going, could we have a mini workshop with just this one issue in it on the 3rd?
Could do whatever you want, yeah.
You think we'd be ready to go by then? Because then we could say, we could set the public hearing thereafter and then vote on it on the 17th with comfort.
I have no issue with that.
Everybody okay if we try that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let's try to do that. Okay. That was towing.
A little more than you bargained for.
I know. So,
Who knew we had so many questions about towing?
the one
So
thing
you want to come join us?
yeah, the one thing I've learned is I know what Amber reads now. She reads children's literature, probably for
Among other
a
things.
nephew. Right? But we're doing capital programs, so Susan, thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Very exciting.
Thank you.
Good night.
Almost as exciting as towing.
Okay.
Are we waiting for Dan?
Yeah, I would wait for Dan, and then
I would like to put
if you
up
want,
any-
I'll give a little introduction.
I was going to do the introduction,
Oh, all right.
and then you were
Have at
going
it.
to go into the details.
I like
But
it.
if you want to steal my thunder.
No, I'm good.
Let me just log in really quick, in case I need to look up
Yeah, give him a
anything.
minute.
Well, it's good to see you all. This is my first meeting with the new council members, but I've met you all before and worked with you all before, so this should be a straightforward process. Just to go over our process with the capital program, we meet with the department heads, Chris and I meet with the department heads in April, and we go over their requests and their methodology for evaluating their equipment life and the status of their current projects and the future projects. We include our city engineer for some of these discussions as well, as he helps to cost out some of the projects that we have going on. From there, we developed the 5-year program, which is this year, it's for 2025 through 2029, based on their estimates and quotes. This brings us to our presentation tonight of the draft of that program. And the city code calls for the program to be presented to you by May 31st of each year. We plan on setting the public hearing on the June 3rd workshop or meeting, and then June 17th for the public hearing. We'll also publish it in the paper, and I will come back on the 17th for discussions about the 5-year program. At that time, I could also present a draft funding plan for at least the 2025 year. And then finally, we need to adopt the 5-year capital program by July 31st of the year. So the capital program consists of our funding our operating funds, the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. What we're doing here is looking for more of the long-term, greater cost assets that we're either purchasing or we're rebuilding, or and so most of these have lives of 5 years to up to 40 years if it's a water and sewer line. So just to give you an overall overview of what we're presenting here for the across 3 funds for the 2025 year, and this can be found on page 5. For the 2025 year, we're proposing a funding plan or a capital program for $8,456,070. For the 2026 year, it's $7,171,800. 2027 is $4,027,880. 2028 is $2,993,920, and 2029 is $6,442,930. The total is $29,092,600 for the 5 years. So obviously, we're just focusing on the 2025 year tonight, or in this process. The 26 through 29 year are more of costs and concepts, rather than we're only actually, we will only actually be authorizing the 2025 year. So 2026 through 2029 are more of estimates. There's some escalators in there. Let's say it's a vehicle. We put in an escalator for inflation. But of course, there's always going to be fluctuations. So we will revisit this each year, with the first year of the program being the most concrete one. Do you want to get into the details, or I don't want to talk about debt until after we talk about some of the details of the plan? The big items, at least?
Sure, I'll go through. So some of the items are recurring items for which we're paid revenues. Like if you look at our milling and paving line, we put that in there to track it. That all of that money is paid for by our annual allocation of CHIPS, which is the Consolidated Highway Program. So when Susan brings you the financing plan, you'll see what of this. Generally, there are three places we pay for these things from. One is debt through the issuance of bond and anticipation notes, which we call bands, or bonds themselves later on. Use of fund balance or use of outside funds like grant funds or special funds like we have a rec fund. This year we were trying to be careful. It sounds like a lot, but most of the spending you'll see is in the water and the sewer, other than two major items. So in the general fund, Highway Department, we can go through each item, but bigger picture, it's just we're replacing equipment that's getting towards the end of its useful service life. In Parks and Rec, one of the two major expenditures is in Parks and Rec. So South Avenue Park rehabilitation, we had authorized, and Susan will tell me the number, 230 or 280,000. As we dug into the design of that park, we wanted a better bathroom than we originally spec'd. We wanted better quality stuff and we thought, look, we're going to do this once. Let's do it correctly. So we're proposing to add $575,750 to the South Avenue Park, making that approximately an $800,000 spend. The other major item that you'll see in the general fund is the replacement of our ladder truck. The ladder truck has been chronically breaking down, and ironically, it went out of service again this morning. The current ladder truck is going to be 10 years old in 2025. Right now, to order a new ladder truck, it's a 52-month advance order. So what our thought is that we're almost at the end of the useful life for our ladder truck, which is a $1.7 million expenditure. If we order that after we pass the capital program, it won't be coming until 2029 or 2030, which is when we're going to really need it. So we're proposing to put that in this year, knowing that we're not going to spend that money, but we need to make the commitment and do the bonding resolution to be able to order the truck.
Right.
So those are the big items. In highway, it's replacing some vehicles. In the police department, generally, we're trying to replace 2 vehicles a year. We had previously spec'd out locker room improvements for $250,000. We think we can do it in-house for $100,000. And we know we can do that because we just did the wastewater treatment plant, which was supposed to be over $200,000, and we did it for about $45,000 in materials. And our guys did a fabulous job on it. In the water fund, you'll see there are 2 major items that we're looking to add this year. One is an increase in the Melzinga Dam rehabilitation, which has been pending for some years. The final design has been completed. It's been submitted to the New York State DEC for their approval. We've been going back and forth on them. But in the intervening time, our estimates have gone from $2.9 million to $3.9 million. So this adds to that. Additionally, below that, you'll see we've proposed a $1 million water main replacement on Fishkill Avenue. When we were going to do the Fishkill-Teller Avenue, all as one DOT project, we didn't really have time to do this. When the bids came back last year and were so high and caused us to reject the bids and pause the project, and then subsequently truncate it at Blackburn, it gave us a chance to look at the underground utilities in Fishkill Avenue. So what we'd like to do, you've already authorized $1.2 million for sewer main on Fishkill Avenue in that area that's no longer in the DOT project. We'd like to add doing replacing the more than 100-year-old water main so that everything is in good shape, and then as we're finishing the Fishkill-Teller Avenue project next year, we would be looking to do this work and then pave the whole thing all the way to the Fishkill border. And as you know, we're still trying to figure out how to get the sidewalks done in that area too. When we do the kickoff meeting next week with the contractor, we're going to start to ask for some numbers on what it would be to do the rest of the sidewalks. We do have some money in the DOT project, but really getting the underground utilities right helps us not have to dig up the road for 10 years or more. And we've had 3 water main breaks in the last 3 years. So it does make sense. Its useful life has exceeded 100 years, and we're looking to do that. In the wastewater treatment plant, we've got a couple issues. One is that we have a roof on the administration building that we need to replace. We've done some asbestos evaluations. We have a little bit of asbestos, not that much. I think the 500 is probably going to be more than we need, but we're going to bring that building to code. It has almost no insulation in the roof. We'll be adding a layer of insulation. We'll be redoing the whole membrane of the roof. I've asked the city engineer to also evaluate whether it is potential for solar installations, because we're getting state grants now for clean energy, and we're looking for the next roofs to do. And you'll also see that the next big project is the replacement of 2 of our blowers. This is in the aeration system, and those are essentially no longer serviced by the manufacturers. We can't get parts. We can't fix them. If they go down, our process literally grinds to a halt. So we are looking to do that as well.
So when you say process, you mean haulers, right?
Yeah, no, I mean also our processing of all sewage.
All of it.
Yeah.
So it's a public health concern, but it's also we lose revenue from the haulers by doing that, by not fixing it.
And again, like the mayor
when they
had
go
said
down.
previously, we're really rebuilding the plant one piece at a time. We're about to finish the primary settling tanks. Some years ago, we did a new headworks building and secondary settling tanks. So we've made good progress. This year we're still waiting for the DEC to approve our dewatering system upgrade from the old belt press system that we keep duct taping back together. And we're going to have a more efficient centrifuge system. But again, those are very capital intensive. Both of those plants, both of those systems, water and wastewater, are constantly in need of update. And we've stayed ahead of it. Some years ago, the city was under consent decrees and getting fines. I'm happy to report that's not the case. We're out ahead of that. Ironically, it hurts us on trying to get some of the grants that we would be able to get, but we are still going for grant funding for different parts of this.
So the blowers that you were talking about are essentially end of life?
Yes.
Past end of life, it
Past
sounds
end of
like,
life.
yeah. What's roughly their useful lifespan?
I'd have to look.
Yeah, I have to look
I think it's 30.
Okay. That's good enough, thanks.
Yeah,
My
it's not,
computer
we're not
died.
going to be replacing them every few years.
That's kind of what I was getting to. Is this something that like becomes obsolete after a short amount of time?
Yeah.
So that's a good enough
And
answer,
I think
Susan.
the other
Thank you.
issue was we bought a product that was with a smaller company. And generally, we're really trying to spec out things that we know are going to be in business for the next decades.
Sure.
This is a pretty stable industry. People aren't coming and going so much.
Yeah, one thing I can offer on this is there was a joint study for sewer with the town and the village of Fishkill, and I
Mhm.
think at that time, we got an indication that our sewage treatment plant was near its end of useful life.
Right.
Was that the right time? It came, I think it
Yes.
came then.
Well, it wasn't just the plant, it was all the functions.
Yeah, and, you know, so someone said, oh, that'll cost $40-50 million to replace. It was just this nutty number. But I think what we've been doing is replacing pieces of it as opposed to saying we have to build an entire new
Right.
right? And I think that's going to extend our life, which made a lot of sense to me. So,
And you have limited choices too. It's like rebuilding a car that you have to drive while you're rebuilding. We can't just shut the sewer plant down for, 2 years to rebuild the whole thing. And we don't have an additional footprint where we could do a new plant down there.
And I think these blowers are built in Germany. I think that's where I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So, Sue, do you have additional things?
I think you hit all the
I didn't go
big
through every
items.
detail, but again, if you have questions, let's please run through them. And I was trying to just give a broader,
Absolutely.
big picture.
So like the police vehicles, whether they're patrol or unmarked, they have a 10-year life. A lot of the highway trucks, the one-ton dumps, those are a 20-year life. Our one dump plow sander is 30 years old. So we are definitely getting more than the useful life out of most of our equipment. So sometimes it becomes hazardous too. Maybe the body's rusted out. So it takes a lot to repair some of these items too.
And you will see in the highway department, we did also follow up with the salt brine maker. You previously approved the truck and the delivery system. This is the thing that mixes the salt with the water. So we are continuing to move towards pre-treatment of our roads, which is reduces the amount of salt that we use, reduces the amount of environmental impact, reduces the amount of deterioration of concrete and our trucks.
Right.
Great.
I'm curious, I know that most of our police vehicles are now electric or hybrid. I'm curious what the market is for electric highway department vehicles. Is there yet a market for that, or is that still several years away that there could be electric or hybrid
Well,
options?
I would just correct that. Most of the vehicles are not electric or hybrid. We're still in the midst of transitioning. So generally, we buy 2 police vehicles a year. You have about 22 vehicles, average life of 2, so we're doing 2, once in a while a catch-up vehicle. Most of the detective cars now are electric.
Sorry, I was commenting on what's in this capital plan, not what we have
so,
now.
and then we only have a few of the Ford Interceptors. We have about 1.5 to 2 year backlog on getting these cars. But we're moving all of the patrol cars to hybrids because they come in a police package. So the car is formulated for the things that we need, like they can be upfit with the, there's a screen between the front and the back seat. There's lighting and computer systems that have to go in. So they actually make the Interceptor, which is a hybrid, as a police package. At some point, we would, if there's an EV package that's available to us, we'll be moving to that as well. With the highway trucks, we've looked at, you have up to like an F-150 can be electric. So like any kind of light utility vehicles, we haven't seen something that can really stand up for the plowing needs. Like the plows use a lot of electricity, the lights use a lot of electricity. If you're in the middle of plowing, you can easily go refuel. You can't easily just go and recharge.
And the other thing is, you're not putting a plow on a F-150. You're putting it on a one-ton dump truck. So that is about twice the size of an F-150.
But again, every year we ask, like, what's available? We do some research. We're looking at Chevy now has an EV that we think has some possible use for some of our applications. We were looking at the F-150 that's had some issues. Again, but any of the small cars are all going to be EVs. Like we just bought the wastewater treatment plant operator a new vehicle to replace a 20-year-old car, and that's a fully, it's electric vehicle.
And as some of our older vehicles become available, we might pass them down to non-emergency departments, like building or
rec.
rec. Rec needs a replacement of a truck, so they would probably get the next one. We did hire a new deputy building inspector this year, and he will need a vehicle eventually. He's driving the dog van.
The doggy van.
Yeah, we're sharing services with the dog van, but, so we would prioritize the emergency vehicles first.
Yeah, it's great to see, I don't remember this being true last year, that for the police department, that all of the vehicles are able to be electric or hybrid, and so I appreciate, just as you check every year, I ask, I think, or someone asks every year, just kind of what is out there in the market that, that might be available to us, so I appreciate
Yeah,
you
like
being
we tried a
diligent.
new brand, like we hadn't tried the Chevy Volt or Bolt, and that was the last one we bought. So we're also trying to understand what's going to last, work for us operationally, not fall apart.
Yeah, great.
So I just had a couple of comments. One, most of the departments that have equipment, not necessarily infrastructure like the sewer department, it makes a lot of sense to just space them out kind of evenly. In other words, if I have 30 vehicles in the highway department, you'd want to kind of replace them every couple of years, so it's kind of a standard, close to a normal amount. This looks right, right?
Yeah.
2028 looks a little heavy. You might want to space them out, but I can't tell. We had a long period where we weren't replacing anything.
That's
and
correct.
I know that. That said, I know that lengthening the life of capital items is by far the most effective way of reducing your spend. And so as long as you're doing it intelligently, and I think we're going to have one example of where we weren't doing it intelligently, that's the right thing to do. And so I find the highway department looks fine, police looks fine, fire, there's a truck we should talk about, roads look fine, sidewalks look fine. On parks, there's a couple things we should, discuss. That would be my 2 cents. So.
I have a couple of questions, just the newbie questions here, but on the forward years, I know you said it's just costs and concepts with escalators, but, looking particularly like 2027 and out, I mean, are these typically, from historical what's happened in the past, like half of what they're really going to be when that year comes along?
No. For instance, the milling and paving, that depends on how much we have in CHIPS funding. So, the breathing apparatus for the fire department, that's actually based on current costs and the number that we need to replace in that year. Because for fire safety standards, it's every certain number of years you have to replace these types of things. Sidewalk improvements, we're just trying to put a placeholder in there to get a certain number of sidewalks done each year. So we'll review it again, for instance, in 2027 and 2028, and we might even push it out one more year, depending on, so.
And they really are placeholders, so we can kind of think about how close are we getting to our credit limit. And that's one of the other things. Like this year, we're being pretty cautious, particularly in the general fund. The water and the sewer are exempted from our statutory limits. But we never really want to hit our statutory limits because well before we hit those, the way that this interacts with the operating budget is we pay the financing. You basically are paying your mortgage through the operating budget. So the loan that the bonds that we take for this, we eventually have to pay back in the operating budget. So we want to be really careful about taking on too much debt. You'll see we move some things back, like we moved repairs to Riverfront Park back. It was a big substantial item, and I'm not clear that, I want to see how things land with some of the projects we're doing right now to understand what capacity we have. It's good to keep in mind when we started moving forward on the fire department in 2021, our estimate was $10 million. And by the time we added things like the geothermal system and an all-brick exterior and the issues with escalating prices, we're now at 14.6 million. So, those latter years, things can tend to move up or down depending on urgency and depending on how much capacity, we have to take on additional debt.
So in between the years of 2012 and now, we have invested significantly in ourselves. Our capital plans have been large. We've funded it with as many grant funds as we can get, state aid, surpluses of fund balance we've had from previous years, and the remaining pieces, we've issued a lot of debt. And we did that to do what we needed to do to beautify the city and also just upgrade the infrastructure to where it needed to be. So we've been doing that. I can get you some numbers, but we were having $10 million capital plans a year. So it's been significant over the last couple of years. So we can't sustain that, but I think we've taken out some of the really big items. DPW garage, new fire department. We might renovate a city hall, but we're not building a new city hall anytime soon. So we've taken on all those really big items, and in the water and the sewer fund, things that were regulatory requirements we had to do. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. I obviously will keep it in mind. I do an analysis each time we're preparing this of what our fund balance is, how much we can apply it to the plan, how much we can issue in debt and also stay under our debt limit, and what our future debt service levels look like. We want to keep them even. We had an amount drop off in the 2024, and I'm talking general fund. We had a large chunk drop off in 2024. That means an issue was paid off, and we'll have another one drop off in 2025. That's why we were able to move forward with the fire department this year, because we could afford to start paying for it in 2025 and keep a level funding of debt service. So just to let you know some of the background of what we've been doing to make sure that we're keeping it steady.
Susan, when are you going to show us the funding plan for the 2025?
I would do that. I could do that on the 17th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that's my proposed.
could you bring
funding
the bond schedule, like when everything's coming due at that time as well?
Sure.
I think we looked at that last year.
Yeah.
Around this time, right?
Yeah. No, I asked for the same
Oh, is
thing.
it
plan? Yes.
No,
No.
no, but we'll see
I
it.
have it with me, and I've given it out. I usually bring it when I'm doing the operating budget, when there was an orientation, or whenever anybody else asks for it. So.
Yeah, because that's important, the way you're kind of hearing it work, right? 3 funds, water and sewer are separate, but all paid by our water fees. We have amongst the lowest water fees in the area, and we have a lot of other revenue that really helps us in that big spot. So we've been comfortable doing our capital work there to catch up on stuff, although it's part of our total bonding, right? Even though the funding is separate, it's part of our total bonding. And we need to see that. I asked for exactly the same thing, and I need to see the schedule, right? And the total bond debt service component in the operating budget is about $2 million?
Oh, the payments?
Yeah.
I think that was the principal. I don't think the interest.
Yeah, we'll cover it when you get to it.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so, and then, are you looking just at general fund, general water sewer? So,
Yeah, I can tell you the one that kind of surprised me, because I got a briefing on this, and that's where I asked, can I see the debt schedule? So we should all do that. The one that kind of surprised me was the ladder truck. And that one goes back to that statement we made about if you can lengthen the life of something really expensive, it really drops our total cost. And apparently this is one where we didn't do the maintenance that we needed to do, which is disappointing because it's sort of on us in a way. Now, maybe it wasn't a great vehicle, but from what I could tell, it seemed to relate to that, so.
it's both.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's more of a preventative maintenance plan in process now. And also, I think it was substandard quality from what I hear from those years.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about that. So,
But the make of the vehicle?
what's that?
The make of the vehicle?
Yes, the steel that they used to create, fire trucks are always a new build. So, and sometimes they take 1 year to right now, the lead time is 4 years.
52 months.
52 months. But it's the quality of the products put into it as well,
This has had problems since day one, too.
right?
It could have been maintained a lot better
And
as well.
fire truck repairs are very expensive. The bill could be $20,000 to $60,000 for the repair.
And Mayor, your number in the 2024 operating budget for the general fund, our financing right now is $2,342,000.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And then in water,
Should be about 650.
in
Right, and
water,
that's
we're about
$1 million-ish.
650.
Okay.
And then in wastewater, that's going to be higher. You're at 1.382, so 1,382,000.
One of the other big items here is I haven't issued debt since 2021, June of 2021 to be exact. We have done a lot of work. So on top of the current debt that we have debt we haven't issued yet. So we put in all the authorizations in place to make sure we are in compliance legally. But the firehouse, I haven't issued any debt on that yet.
Although we've approved it.
You've approved it. We have
Yep.
everything in place
And
to
we
issue
put
the
fund
debt.
balance towards it. So Susan's, budgeting ahead of time helped us put aside $4 million in fund balance for the firehouse.
Right.
And
Are
that's a
you
big-
expecting you'll have to issue some this calendar year?
Yes.
We're very close to that. I'm expecting June, July time frame. I was hoping interest rates would go down, and then it would be short-term financing. And as hopefully we see interest rates go down in the next couple of years, we would roll it over each year, pay down whatever we can in principal. Obviously have to pay some interest, but we've also been earning quite a bit of interest as well. So, and then once we get to what we think is the best interest rate within the next 5 years, we would do a long-term bond.
And the context for this bonding is we're still in good shape. Like, we have a healthy fund balance. We just don't want to go below where we're proposing to go. Because if we go too low, then they start to take a look at our bond rating. The bond rating impacts the financing rates that we have to pay. The better the bond you have, we have the third best bond and bond rating, and the best that we can have for a municipality of our size, as I understand it. So that's important to just, we're trying to do as much as we can, but like Susan mentioned, the city hall, I had dreams of like, okay, we'll move the city hall and we'll have new offices, and honestly, it's
more
not,
space.
it would be better to build a couple offices in the back, or get a little trailer or something, or rent something other than building a whole new building.
But it was exciting to build a new building. But this is sobering, right? And then this is one of the, you're hearing how, Susan in particular, but also Chris and my discussions, and how we're trying to kind of keep to a really sound budgeting arrangement, right? And you're hearing some of the tricks, right? You pay down as much as you can with fund balance. You delay when you issue bonds. You do short term at a lower rate because you're expecting rates to drop.
Right.
Push things around a little bit.
Take those
are the
one-time
tactics that you do.
surpluses.
Yeah.
Take those one-time surpluses and either apply it to our capital plan or pay down a short-term debt. That way, you're investing in yourself with a previous year surplus, whatever that may be.
And then get the big dollar grants, right? Just focus hard on the big dollar ones because they make a big difference.
Well, like, we'll also be selling Beacon Engine, which we still own, at the end of the year. That building's proceeds, we want to pay down the
Principal.
firehouse project.
Yeah.
So the plan is public hearing on the 17th, and
Yeah.
also the kind of funding plan, same time?
Yes, I'll do the funding plan at the workshop,
Okay.
and then the public hearing would be at the actual meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
So we had the workshop component, then the public meeting. And then we'll meet again on July 1st, so if we need to continue
And
that
any other
workshop.
detailed discussions, items that you might have for this, the 5-year program too?
You said you had questions about something in the recreation section as well, Lee?
Chris mentioned the one which was Memorial Park, I'm sorry, Riverfront, so Seeger Park. We just moved it back a year. There's a lot of questions in there, and I think we should wait to see how things develop. Metro North may want to do something. If there's some sort of development there, we may want the developer to do park improvements for us.
Right.
It's kind of worth waiting on.
Yeah.
There's a question also about elevations down there.
Yeah.
Relative to floodplain.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. So, that was one we said, let's just move it back a year. That's one of the tactics is, you take the item that's a little bit more lower priority or optional, and you just push it back some, right? So that's what I just wanted to point that one out. We actually did the same for the placeholder for the community center, right? You can't build a community center for $5.2 million, right? The most you could do is you could improve what's at West Center Street, which is still what's in our head as to what we can afford, but we just pushed it back, right? Because we're not sure yet. And, all of the numbers after year one are if-come maybes, right? They're placeholders. But that was some of the thinking we were doing.
We even did it on sewer for the aeration tanks. You'll see we bifurcated that into a design phase and then construction. Originally, I had wanted to do that in 2025, but I think we can get away another year. Again, trying to extend the useful life of what we have.
There's also our staff capacity and what we can actually accomplish.
Yeah.
We want to complete the projects we have currently, and you can't start a new major project if the first one's not done. So.
Like our city engineer is fully subscribed right now, he has to design the solar array for the highway garage that we want to do this year. We're doing replacement of the steps out here. He's doing the design of the water main and the sewer replacement in Fishkill, and then also serving on all of the committees, like the firehouse. He's in all of our meetings for the firehouse and will be for Fishkill Teller Avenue too. So we're limited on. He's also overseeing the sewer plant, like the primary settling tank and the roof.
The other thing I said when we went through this with Susan and Chris and myself and Ben, and looked at some other things occurring, including police turnover, salaries of competing police forces, and our employment agreements, because our biggest operational spend is on people. I think we're going to see the next few years be tighter than we were in the last couple in terms of our ability to spend. A lot of that was, remember, we got this big, huge pop from sales tax revenue, right? And we're kind of working our way through using that up. So you'll see me being a little bit more cautious. You'll probably see a budget proposal that uses the cap rate instead of staying below the tax cap, those sorts of things. And, we'll take you through it, but kind of at a high level, we're going to get a little tighter, right?
Yeah,
that would be my
because you have CSEA's contract coming up at the end of this year, and then the police and fire next year. We locked in great contracts in 2021, but again, they didn't keep up with inflation. We're not going to get away with 2% like we did in 2021.
Right. In some respects, getting low rate agreements is just deferring what we may have to do in terms of rates. Because if we have to keep up our salaries to be competitive, we may have gone through this period where, the escalators were low, but now we're low in terms of what we're paying, and we're going to have to catch up. And again, these are all high-level conversations. Don't assume any of them are, in stone. I'm just kind of saying that's what we're all kind of seeing right now.
Keeping the lower salaries too might cost us more with turnover, especially if there's shift coverage.
Yeah.
So it's not always the most prudent thing financially.
Yep. And again, these are just commentary, right? There's no action right now.
Is there detail somewhere on what the plans are for the community center? I imagine, it seemed like I'm the only one who doesn't know about the big ticket item on here.
You're looking at it.
We
It's a
did it.
placeholder.
There are survey results,
Yeah.
Right.
which has a lot of important information about what the public wants. I don't know where those are, but I
Mark,
think you should definitely
They're in
have
the,
access to it.
that's on our website. It's the community facility and program
right.
plan that we
That
did.
I'm familiar with, yeah. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if
And-
there's any
Yeah,
physical
we'll get you.
plans that
There's-
had been
there's not
developed.
physical
So this
plans.
is
I mean,
just a
we're still
wild
trying to
guess
finish
about what we're
out South
comfortable
Avenue
spending.
Park, which is hopefully being done this fall.
Yeah, the thing that has been done in rec has been the operating budget, right? We've more than doubled it in 5 years. So, that, in some respects, we were making incremental decisions rather on the operating side, so offering programs as opposed to a physical structure. And
But we're making the physical improvements too. We Play
Yep.
area
Oh, that's
we've
right.
invested in. There's $50,000 here in paving. Like, we're going to pave that parking lot by the bathroom at Memorial Building so that there's more efficient layout of parking and it's
And the
ADA
South Avenue
compliant.
Park.
South Avenue Park, tennis courts and basketball courts being replaced, a nice new bathroom. Again, we're spending a little bit more to get a quality structure down there.
I was just curious about
Yeah.
what was known about that 5.25.
This was put in there before we actually had the rec study done last year, and so at this point, we've been moving towards taking the boxes off of the rec study and doing what has been recommended and requested from the public. So Mark Price has been taking care of that, so, and I'm sure he can update you on what progress he's made on that,
Yep.
besides what we're telling you right now.
Chris, I meant to ask this question about the Memorial Park parking lot. Does that include the islands with the trees?
Yes.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, so as we do these parking lots, I'm not just paving everything. It has trees at all four corners and an island to help break up the heat island effect in the summer.
No, that's a
Every
cons-
project I do has
Every
trees.
discussion we have, can you put a tree in there? How about a tree here?
Okay, we don't need to go there. Thank you.
Yeah. Other stuff?
This is a small thing, given the scope of things, but in looking at the Parks and Recreation Department budget overall, it does seem like a lot of projects are stacked in 2027, not much in 2026, which I understand we're focused on 2025. But I just wanted to note that and ask, because I noticed that the pool restoration project was another one that moved into 2027. I assume that Mark made a determination that the fiberglass is fine for now. I know it just keeps coming up as something that needs maintenance.
Mark made some fixes on the pool that can take us out a couple years. We've also been, I think Governor Holcomb might have mentioned that there might be some funding for some
Yeah, so
pool programs.
There kind of is a new interest in investing in public pools. I think we're circumspect about whether it's worth investing in that pool.
Right.
And I think again, our lease with the state is up for that property in 2028. It can be renewed for another 20 years, but as we get closer to that date, I think we need to have conversations with the state about them conveying that property to us. It's hard for me to want to put a lot of taxpayer money in when they could pull the plug in 2028. The level of regulation of us has been onerous. We have buildings that are collapsing and we can't take them down without going through this crazy process with the state. So we put back, we're doing what we need to have it safe and usable.
But that's in the operating budget.
Yeah, that was in the operating.
Yeah. Yeah, this was one of the ones we pushed back a year, but again, for some of the reasons Chris just mentioned. Right?
Well, I think the other thing about the pool university settlement is that because it's state-owned property, it has to be open to anybody, not just the city of Beacon.
Yes.
Right, so if someone from Cold Spring can't be turned away, anyone from New York State can use that pool. But if we had a city pool, you could have to show residents and use, and it'd be open just to people in Beacon.
Or prioritized.
Right, but that's some of the problems that we've had with regulating the number of people, and the process for getting people into the pool has changed over time, become a little onerous for some perspectives, but there's a reason for it.
Well, and we've adjusted that. We kind of had it put in place. We are going to have a new platform that's a lot easier. You don't have to sign up with an account. You can be in line. If there's an opening, you can just go on your phone and quick pay, and then you can come in. So we heard the community about, that we were trying to balance not having Cold Spring take over our pool. And we're trying to get it right, and it's still a work in motion.
Yeah.
A project in motion.
Sorry, this is another tiny one, but the police street camera on Main and 9D, I had a note that we spent some $14,000 on it last year. Is this an upgrade or a new camera? Are we adding a camera?
So do you have the backup from Sands?
Yes, we actually were able to get a really good deal this year on the camera. So we were able to get 2 for the price of 1. So we plucked one off the capital plan.
And I'm looking up last year's capital project just to see what we did.
Okay, while they're looking up, any other questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay,
It's-
I'm good.
It's, I think
Yeah, we
it's,
did-
it's
you're-
new. It's at Tompkins Hose, Main and 90.
Oh, meeting at the new fire.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up getting 2 cameras. So, sorry, just to clarify, how many cameras are at
I think we
intersection
need to
now?
go back and talk to Sands, because there is something in from last year for Main Street and 9D.
I know. I think we switched around where they were
We did a
doing it
different
because
camera?
of this.
Okay.
Because we were going to put this here, so they were able to.
So we'll get you an answer for on the workshop on the 17th on that.
Thank you.
All good?
Yeah.
I appreciate the conversation, and again, just to view it, remember, as it's high level, except for next year. Right? And Susan will come back with the funding component of this, so the piece that goes into the, both the debt service schedule, and then the piece that goes into the operating budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an annual routine of mine after we discuss the capital plan, if we could now look at sidewalks.
We can talk about that too, because we dialed down the number on the sidewalks
that.
from 500 to 250 because we don't have the capacity to do $500,000 worth of sidewalks a year.
But,
Can I finish?
sorry.
So we have been getting approximately $200,000 a year in CDBG, Community Development Block Grants. That went to rebuild one side of South Avenue in 2022, the other side in 2023. This year, we're waiting for the final allocation to be awarded. HUD was late because of the budget, so we still don't have the allocation, but we had to propose the project way back last fall, so we did West Center Street. We're probably going to need to do a hearing on the CDBG grant in August to be able to make the next funding round. And we're trying to, again, replace the ones that are deteriorated and in poor condition in the catchment area for CDBG. So we've been talking with Mickey about possibly doing next year Wolcott Avenue, because we've done, we're doing all the sidewalks on Teller and Fishkill. We've done South Avenue, we've done West Center Street, and then that piece will connect between 2 nicely done sidewalks that we've already done in a high-use area. Again, at some point, I know the mayor wants to have a conversation about prioritizing sidewalks. I'm literally just trying to design these so that I don't lose the CDBG money, and then fix a couple ancillary areas like the east side of Main Street where we've been taking down, 1 tree a year to replace the disheveled sidewalks.
Maybe when some of the big projects are past us, 2024, 2025, maybe we can increase that number if capacity goes up after these big projects are behind us.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
That's possible.
I know, Chris, you and I have had this discussion, and we've joked about how I think you and I are always not always in agreement on sidewalks. I know that you prioritize repairing sidewalks, but I feel like it's my duty to bring up an unsafe condition at Grove Street in the absence of a sidewalk. And I think that it's very important for us to put a sidewalk in on Grove Street. Not too long ago, I was driving my son to school, and on the way back, 2 parents and 3 children were walking down Grove Street, down that hill where that new construction just happened at Highland. And I had to go on the other side of the road into, oncoming traffic to go around this family. And a car came down the hill, and I almost had a head-on collision because I can't see what's on the other side of the hill. And so it's a very unsafe condition, and it's a high-traffic area for families going to school. And I really believe that we should discuss Grove Street as an option when we're talking about CDBG funds.
Well, if I respect that that's an area that's on your radar, I would say that the discussion, why don't we do that when we're prioritizing sidewalks? The CDBG thing is, I'm literally on a hamster wheel every year, and I don't have time to design new sidewalks. There's no way they would fund that project. It's not in the catchment area.
It is.
That
Well, I
part
know
of-
the catchment area might change, but it was
Yeah.
last time we looked at it.
Okay, but again, like, I don't think they're going to go for new sidewalks when we have collapsing sidewalks. If you want to do that as a discrete project, I think we should have a broader conversation about what the criteria are for doing new sidewalks. When you have some miles of sidewalks that still need to be reconstructed and or filled in.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I get that there might be people that live up there. They've moved into a neighborhood that did not have sidewalks. Other people did move into neighborhoods with sidewalks that are, a patchwork of conditions and sometimes not even continuous, certainly not ADA compliant. So we are making a run at trying to do a neighborhood at a time. We can have that conversation with the planner and talk about how we would prioritize. But with the CDBG, we're in such a tight timeline. I don't know.
Well, the only thing I would add is that when we go to prioritize is when we can have conversations. When we look at a single sidewalk, it's kind of hard because you can say, well, that's important, but it's hard to kind of, because I've looked at that street a couple of times because I know people have asked about it. And as I drive down it, the southern side first has a sidewalk for a portion of it.
And then it stops.
Might have room for the sidewalk the rest of the way up. But you really have to be pretty irresponsible to be walking on the north side, especially on the block that now has, what do we call that? Is it riprap or whatever?
There-
that-
it's a
Nobody walks
Gabion
on the
wall.
north side.
Yeah, I hope
Everybody
not.
walks on the south side,
Okay.
as far as I've ever seen, yeah.
Yeah, because that's by far the safer side. Might be room, right? It's kind of tough. It's probably not an easy one, but there might be room there.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I'm not, my job is to call out safety issues in Ward 4, and Ward 1, 2, and 3 obviously have other things that people want to address, but I have to put that on the table because, one, I interact with that unsafe condition a lot, bringing my kid to school, but I've heard from a lot of families about it. So.
And I would just say the complexity too in doing new sidewalks is that you have to have the right of way, and we may or may not have the available right of way for it. And it's not just sidewalks when you're doing that, because you're making a change to the road system. You're making a change often to the stormwater system, because you're going to have catch basins and stuff in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the replacing in kind, or replacing with an ADA where it was an ADA, is a lot easier than trying to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think I'm hopeful, like we're getting, the firehouse, God willing, is going to be done this fall, and that opens up some bandwidth to do additional things. We've had all we could do just to keep up with the firehouse, and now Teller and Fishkill.
Can we do the budget amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good?
Want to talk about the budget amendment?
Oh,
Are you going to do those?
I forgot about a budget amendment, actually.
Well, we don't have to do it.
I don't have it, I
keep
don't
our
have
well
it in
as
front of
it
me.
Ed said he didn't want the well fixed.
Well, number 2?
That's what he said.
Right, so it had failed, and so we sent it out for, to be looked at and evaluated, and this is what the repairs on it would be. So this would be if the current pump fails, that we could put this pump in. and it's well worth it to fix it.
And a little bit of context here. We have 2 wells in the town of Fishkill that we own, and then 1 well from which we also buy water. This is one of the ones that we own, and we had a catastrophic failure of the pump system in well 2 last year. We bought a new pump. They pulled the old well, the old backup pump, and apparently we can repair it and have a backup, so the next time this goes down, that can easily be replaced, and we don't have a gap in time where we don't have that well activated. So this would move $47,000 to repair of equipment. It basically uses all of the remaining available contingency fund in the water fund budget, and also taps $17,000 in our fund balance in the water fund, which is a robust fund right now.
Just to make sure I understood, so we didn't have a backup pump before?
No.
And so, right,
Right.
the previous one is becoming our
Right.
backup.
So it was, that well was out of service, so we had to buy more from the Village of Fishkill.
Right.
And the new pump is over 200,000. So to repair this and have a backup that can easily go in, it's you know, it's a little bit of money now, but thinking ahead, it can save us some money.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all we got.
I just wanted to, is it typical to use all the contingency fund?
Each year, in each fund, I would say no, I don't generally use it. I can't think of a year we've went through all of contingency. So, and that just goes back into fund balance.
And then-
I've lowered it over the years too. There used to be
Yeah.
a lot more. We haven't had as many issues trying to, manage the rates, and we could always use fund balance if we need to.
And the fund balance in water is our highest.
Yeah, percentage-wise.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
all right.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Announcement
Motion.
of next meeting?
Oh, sorry. As we said at the beginning of the meeting, and I'll repeat again, because I'm supposed to, our next meeting will be a regular full council meeting on Monday, June 3rd at 7 o'clock.
And
Everybody good?
we'll put in that workshop
One item.
for the one item.
Oh, that's right.
On towing.
Everybody good? Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Pam and Dan? Everyone in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
All right.